How everyone doing? My name is Juan Diaz Scruggs. I will be the moderator for today's event. I am the Adaptive Sports and Leisure Coordinator for Clover Nook Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired in Cincinnati, Ohio. I will tell you a little bit more about myself. I was the 2015 Employee of the Year at my job. I've been at Clover Nook for 9 years, going on 10 now. I started my own ventures outside of Clover Nook. I have a media brand. I love basketball. I record various different games. I have a podcast platform interviewing pioneers, basketball coaches, teachers, and other influential people in the community. It's by the name of Courtside Takeover. Thanks, Brian. By the name of Courtside Takeover. I'm also a motivational speaker. I love speaking, love talking to people. I call myself a basketball nerd. I'm a people person, so very open to various different things. We have a couple people here today, Brian and David, so I'll let them take it away, introduce themselves. Brian?
My name is Brian Anderson. I am Arts and Accessibility Coordinator at Clover Nook Center, located in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I'm very happy to be here today. I am an author, a poet, a recording artist, and I am host of my own interview platform called The Mic Drop with B. Anderson, where I sit down with creatives of all kind and, kind of let them promote themselves and talk about all things them. I've written 2 poetry books, and I have various different recording projects. I have been at Clover Nook Center for 11 years. I was born visually impaired, and I am also the 2022 Clover Nook Center Employee of the Year. And David?
Hi, my name's David Grimes. I work at Clover Nook as well. I am the Quality Assurance Coordinator and Corrector, so I work in the Braille Transcription Department. And I like to say I'm kind of like the last line of defense before things go out the door, because I'm the last person who checks a lot of things before they go out the door. So we do a lot of business with the library service for the blind and disabled. So if something comes back, I'm like, what I miss, things like that. I'm totally blind. I'm wearing khakis and a kind of a red shirt and brown shoes and short hair. And that's about all I got to say about that. But you're going to hear some very vulnerable stuff in this presentation. We have lives like everybody else. I am very active in my church. I am on the board. I sing in the choir. I do praise team. I was married for 19 years until my wife died in August of 2021 very suddenly. And I'm not going to talk about that because then I'll turn into a blubbering mess and we don't want that. So we'll move on from there. So
This is Dez. I am wearing a kind of burnt orange polo shirt. I have on glasses with some jeans and some Yeezys.
My description is I have 2-strand twist locks. I'm a brown skinned male. I'm wearing blue polo shirt and jeans and blue cohons.
So, David, it seems like you be pretty busy inside and outside of work. What's some challenges you faced to get you to this point in your life?
I tell you, one of the big challenges is, which I'm sure anybody else can relate to this, is transportation, getting places. That's always a big deal, especially if you're totally blind or visually impaired. Luckily, I have a big family and I never have trouble with people being able to take me somewhere if I need to, but I always tell them, if you can't, let me know. Don't just say, yeah, I'll do it, and miss out on something that you were going to do. So transportation to me is a big issue, but thanks to Uber and Lyft, which has been a godsend because you can take them. They charge you for it, but it's okay. I usually try to take them and try to meet up with someone that I know who's going to be where I'm going, especially if it's somewhere new. Getting here was fun, but we did very well. All 3 of us flew on the same flight. We did okay. So, I also, I don't even know what else I'm going to talk about here. I think I'm still adjusting to the time change. I don't know. But so transportation to me is a big issue, and luckily I have very nice friends and family who are willing to take me places if I need to go somewhere. But that is one of the big issues. But the nice thing is, our presentation is can, not can't. So There are ways to get around it. You can do public transportation, of course, which I've done in Cleveland when I lived in Cleveland, went to college. I took the buses downtown. If it was a nice day, I'd walk about a mile down from the bus stop, walk down to my college. And that was also the time that I had guide dogs, so that was nice too. I've had 3 guide dogs. Currently I don't have one, but once I met my wife, it was different because she could drive, so that was nice. Didn't have to worry about that as much, but now that I'm in the situation I'm in now, so, but I'm living with my sister-in-law and my brother-in-law, and they are fine to take me to work and pick me up from work. And if something comes up and they can't, they let me know in time where I can make alternate plans. That's another thing. You have to be very flexible, just in case stuff comes up, because you never know when someone's going to get sick or someone's going to have some sort of emergency come up. So I'd say transportation is one of the big issues for me.
That's good you mentioned that, because when you're visually impaired or blind, a lot of people tell you what you can't do. You can't do this, you shouldn't do this, but today we're going to focus on what you can do and tell you how we make things possible that most people say we can't do. So Brian, what's some things that you face to get you to your point in your life you are now? You're a recording artist, you're an author, you're an arts and accessibility coordinator. So what's some of those challenges you face to get you to the point you're at now?
A lot of difficulties that I faced was really self-confidence, with actually being able to believe in myself when you're visually impaired. And my visual impairment is called nystagmus, which is a rapid movement of the eyes in different directions, and it can slightly blur your vision. It's something that is seen by anyone with sight and, who looks at me. And so when that is the first thing that people focus on before they ever hear anything come out of your mouth, before they know any of your abilities, what you're capable of, they focus on the things that you can't do. They focus on the fact that you may not be able to see as well as others. And so a lot of issues that I face is just self-confidence, having a low self-esteem, constantly being talked about and being left out of things. And I feel like, a lot of people fail to realize that, as someone who is blind and visually impaired, we have feelings too. We have obstacles that we have to face. They may be slightly different than others, but, we still face some of those things. And I felt like, once I was able to, kind of get out of my own head and, find some outlets, find some things that made me happy, whether I had to work harder than others at, or whether it was something that was kind of accessible for me, writing kind of became my niche. It kind of became the way to kind of release some of the stresses and things that I was dealing with. It allowed me to, kind of be able to use my voice in a different perspective, not just talking, but kind of being creative with what I was doing. And, thankfully, I was able to practice. I use it as like anyone will play a sport. When you play a sport, you shoot, 1 million baskets a day. So I just practice writing, practice rhyming words, practice learning new words. And, and it really boosted my confidence. It allowed people to see me from a different perspective. And so, those are, just some of the challenges and some of the ways I was able to, get through those things.
Now, when we're young, our parents tend to shelter us, or when you're blind or visually impaired, and tell you, hey, I'll help you do this. So what's some challenges you faced in like your first 10 years of life that maybe you didn't know were challenges now? Like, what's some challenges you faced earlier on in life that as a child that you may didn't think of was so serious until we get to this point now? You're like, hey, that could have been a little different.
Really just accepting my visual impairment. Acceptance is one of the biggest steps. Some people are able to do it earlier than others, but for me, it took me a long time to really accept it. So I worked harder, not smarter. Trying to, impress my peers, or trying to, do everything like my peers instead of, kind of accepting help and making my life a lot easier. I struggled. And so, it's like I didn't want to use large print. I was in denial for a long time. And so, just making my life a lot harder. Kind of beating around the bush. I walked around with my head down for a long period of time. And I didn't realize, that some of the negative things that we do affects us personally. You know, it kind of affects, you know, you fall into depression, you know, you fall into all these different things, and you don't honestly understand why, because you've been doing certain things for a long time. And, you know, of course you have family that encourage you, but, you know, I always felt for the longest time, you know, family, they love you. So of course they're gonna tell you that you can do anything you put your mind to, but, you know, for those people who may be totally sighted, you know, you're not walking in my shoes every day, so you won't understand the, you know, kind of the just difficulties that I may face on a daily basis. So, you know, just really acceptance and, you know, kind of being able to live within me and understand myself better.
David?
Okay, this is where the vulnerability comes in. I'm gonna be very vulnerable here.
Pardon me, this is when the photographer comes in.
Oh, yeah, that was a good segue. That was a really good segue. That was
I
good.
know, I make them happen.
I am
So if you
impressed.
three guys get together, I'm gonna count to 3, so you know when to smile. And I'm ready. It's 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, growing up, from me being totally blind, my family treated me as normally as anybody else. If I got in trouble for something, then I got punished, just like my brothers did. You know, if I did something wrong, I was punished. There was no you know, coddling or sheltering in that respect. For the first few years of my life, I went to a public school. It was back in the 70s, and they were trying to mainstream everybody. But what they did is they put all the visually impaired students in one room. So you had K through 12 or K through 6 in one room. And so one teacher was teaching all the grades. There was an aide in the room. But the only time he interacted with regular students was specials like art, gym, music, recess, lunch. But even at lunch, we sat at our own table. So you're basically kind of in that niche of being surrounded by blind and visually impaired students. Didn't really have much opportunities to interact with the general student population except on the playground or lunch or music or art. And so I'm going to talk about a little story that happened to me when I was in 3rd grade. You know, bullying, how prevalent it is. Well, it's prevalent back then, just wasn't called bullying. There was a kid who called me names every day, called me blind bat, which I'm fine with that. You know, I am totally blind, and bats aren't blind anyway, but he also called me 4 eyes, and I'm like, I don't know why you even call me that because I don't wear glasses. I don't know why you called me 4 eyes, but he did. And he did this for like 2 weeks, and I would ask him, please, you know, don't do that. He kept doing it. Well, one day I'd had enough, and this is where I wouldn't advise any kids, if you're in the room or listening to this, don't keep this in your toolkit. I picked up a rock. And he says, you can't hit me. You can't see me. You won't hit me. You can't see me. Well, he kept talking. So I hit him in the head with the rock. I threw it pretty hard. I just turned around and walked away. I went back to my classroom. The principal came and got me out, brought me to the office, said, okay, we've heard his side. What's your side? So I said, he's been bothering me for 2 weeks. And I said, I asked him nicely to please, you know, quit, and he wouldn't. So today, I guess I reached my breaking point, and I picked up a rock, and he said, well, you can't hit me, you can't see me. He kept talking, so I hit him. And I didn't know it, but his dad was in the room. He said, okay, all right. He said, we're gonna go get you checked out, no problem, but you will be grounded because you've been raised better than this. And so the principal took me out in the hall and said, okay, that's not how you solve problems. You don't throw rocks at people. I said, I know, but I said, I just had enough. You know, and she said, okay, well, that's fine, you know, but don't do that again or else you'll get in more trouble. I said, okay. Of course, so my parents found out about it, so I heard about it from them too when I got home. So it wasn't like that I didn't get in trouble for it. I did. But after that, me and the kid kind of had an uneasy truce sort of set in. He apologized to me and I apologized to him. And we kind of got along for the rest of that year. So that was good. So it just things like that where you just have enough. I mean, you just have enough. And I don't know how the rock got there. I just reached down and picked it up. I don't know if maybe God showed me it was there. I don't know. So I wouldn't advise that to anybody to do. It's not a way to solve your problems. Talk to somebody, talk to adults, talk to teachers, anything like that. I just didn't know what to do at that point. I was just done. So that was the big challenge. Me and my brother, he's like a year and a half younger than me, and we're real close. And he was always watching out for me because when I was about 9, I went to the Oklahoma State School for the Blind. So that was like a residential school. So there again, you're surrounded again by visually impaired students. And I'll talk about more about that later. But I went there, and I'd come home for the holidays or whatever, and our neighborhood was all sighted kids. So I got along with them fine. They were, they understood me, they got me. And I also knew that my brother was there if anything. He used to get mad when people would stare at me. You know how people do that? They'll just stare at you. And he'd say, quit staring at my brother. And I think he's gotten into some fights over that. But he said on a church bus once, he told this kid, stop your GD staring. So it's like, whoa, it's done on a church bus, don't say that. But I mean, he just got mad. I mean, so he took up for me too. And we're real close. So matter of fact, after this trip, I'm going to San Antonio to spend a week with him on vacation with some kids that we grew up with in the neighborhood. So we're going to be doing that. And so, so very vulnerable stuff here, and you'll probably hear more of that from the other two as well. So those were some of my experiences growing up.
That's great. I love the fact that you told that story because my mom, when I lost my sight at the age of 14. Don't let these glasses fool you. They don't work. But, so my mama always told me kids are cruel. So I love the fact that you shared that story. But how has you adapted to those things such as the rock throwing incident and growing up in the community with a lot of sighted kids and you were being the only visually impaired kid? How did you adapt to that, and how did that help you live a more productive life today?
Well, you kind of just, as I was older, when I went to the Oklahoma State School for the Blind, they had a program where you could go to the public high school and if you take courses if you wanted. Well, the only foreign language that our school offered was Spanish. I didn't want to take Spanish. I wanted to take German. So I went to the public high school for 2 years of German classes. So that was really great. That was a good introduction to, the sighted world, so to speak. Everybody was nice at the school. They also liked me because I was really good and I would help them out on stuff. And until they tried to bring a test to me and ask me for help. I'm like, is this a test? Yeah. Like, well, then I can't really help you. It's a test. So they're like, darn, you figured it out, But there are things like that happen. People will try to take advantage of you. I mean, stuff like that happens. And I've got some other stories about that. You can talk to me after if you want. But I haven't thrown rocks at people now that I'm an adult. So everyone's safe here. I don't have any rocks in my pocket. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to bring out a rock and start throwing it at people. But things like that, you just kind of learn. You have to be flexible and you have to be able to, as Brian likes to say, and I hope I'm not stealing your thunder, Brian, but you have to be open-minded. If you want people to understand you, you're going to have to be vulnerable. Because people aren't going to understand you if you're not. If you're closed-minded, if you say, oh, I don't want to talk to you about it, you're just asking me stupid questions. People ask crazy questions all the time. The kids are great. I've spoken to classes of kids, and one kid said, well, how do you go to the bathroom? And another kid said, yeah, how in the world do you aim? and another kid said, who said that? Like, that's disgusting. So, things like that happen. You get questions all the time, and you have to be flexible and open. I've had an adult ask me if my favorite color was black. I'm like, I have no idea. I don't know what black is. And one kid said, what do you see? I said, nothing. He said, it's black. Trust me, it's black. I said, okay, thank you.
I think that it's good that you tell that story, that you touch base on some of that stuff, because I think those are things that people don't talk about when you're growing up and people ask, hey, how many fingers I'm holding up? Right. Just little things like that that kind of irritate you as being blind or visually impaired. Hey, Brian, so you talked about some things you experienced your first 10 years in life, like depression and things of that sort. How have you adjusted to those things, and how have that make you live a more productive life, knowing that that's how your life started?
Well, we all talked about how long our tenure has been at Clover Nook Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired, and the second part of that is for the blind and visually impaired. And so over more than half of our staff there are blind or visually impaired. So honestly, being around more people that were like me, You know, I kind of grew up being around, you know, the majority of people I was around were sighted, you know, so no one could directly relate to the things I was experiencing, you know, both good and bad. And so honestly, starting to work at Clover Nook Center, you know, I was around people who openly joked about their blindness or openly joked about their visual impairment.
I do it all the time.
And for me, I was always, you know, on 10. You know, I was always on edge. And, you know, I felt like if anyone said anything, you know, I'm ready to fight. I'm ready to do anything to defend myself, because more times than not, you know, those people who spoke about, you know, me having a visual impairment were doing it from a malicious standpoint. Mm-hmm. So, you know, being around other people who, you know, kind of told jokes, were at ease about their visual impairment, had accepted, you know, what it was that they were going through on a normal basis, it allowed me to do the same, because I feel like you are your environment. You know, the people who you choose to surround yourself with, you'll become more like-minded. And that was in a good way for me. You know, there were different initiatives over the years that happened. You know, we had an event, it's kind of like a COVID event, so it's virtual, and it was called Boldly BVI, you know, and I got the opportunity to talk about living boldly while being visually impaired. And that kind of propelled me to, you know, an entirely different stratosphere, you know, to where it was the first time on camera where I actually openly talked about being visually impaired. And me being a writer, I was coming off of, you know, writing my first book, and, you know, I wasn't necessarily happy with it, because I said, you know, I want to, you know, kind of put out a project that is more directly tied to me and not just random poetry. And so I found that as a great opportunity for me to, you know, kind of tell my story. You know, my second book was called Vision Over Sight, A Legally Blind Poet's Truth. And it gave me the opportunity to tell my story from my perspective in the form of poetry. You know, to where I wanted to be creative. I didn't want to just ramble. I wanted to be creative. And so, you know, that event in itself, you know, just really allowed me to take a different course of life. It allowed me to be confident. It's the reason why I'm able to sit in front of you all today and, you know, confidently talk about my journey and some of the things that I've experienced on a normal basis. So, yeah.
What initiative
And now you're stuck with us.
what initiative does Clover Nook offer that you're the most proud of?
Well, that's an excellent segue question. So I talked about Vision Over Sight, A Legally Blind Poet's Truth. Well, this past February, they decided to create a fundraising and awards celebration, and they wanted to use the title of my book, Vision Over Sight, for this event, which, you know, that was huge in its own right for me. You know, I never had anyone, you know, take something that I created and made it an event. And, you know, because of that event, February 25th in Cincinnati, Ohio is Vision Over Sight Day. And so to be able to, you know that I mean, especially, you know, Diz that's sitting next to me, I spent long hours trying to come up with this title. You know, I've bounced my poetry off of people, you know, for, you know, over and over and over again. And so, you know, when I kind of came with those three words, you know, I remember Diz saying, that's the one, that's it. And so to have an entire organization, you know, believe in something that I created so much, you know, because I always just looked at myself as, this visually impaired kid that's just trying to fit in, you know, to create something that now has its own day and now stands alone, is something definitely to be proud of.
What initiatives does Clover Nook offer that you're the most proud of, David?
Oh, there's so many. I enjoy working in their Braille department. I'm going to put a plug in for Braille, which I know if you know any children who could use Braille, please don't hinder them in getting the help they need. Because I know some people think, well, my kid has vision, he doesn't need Braille. That's not true, because if they struggle to read print, if they come home with headaches every day and they can't see the board and can't read, you know, they're just going to get further and further behind. So giving them the opportunity to learn Braille, I'm a staunch supporter of Braille. I wasn't real thrilled about the UEB when it came out, but I've gotten used to it. If you can't beat them, join them. So I did. So, I would say it's very important that kids get the opportunity, if they can use Braille, to start learning young. That's how I did. It's helped me so much. And I just want to put a plug in for Braille. And another thing that I'm very proud of is in 2016, they started accessibility, what's it called? Arts and Accessibility Initiative. And what this is we go out to different organizations, museums, art museums, theater groups, natural history museums, zoos, anything where the public is invited, and we try to come up with ways to make their exhibits more accessible to blind or visually impaired people. And we go on audits of the places. We'll go through the places and say, well, you got a lot of signage here. What could we do to help make this accessible? And usually we start out with Braille because that's what we're good at. That's what we do the most of. And so we will start out with Braille with signage or with booklets. Now they're doing QR codes. You will see that we have business cards up here. I forgot mine back in my room, but the other two people have brains, so they brought theirs. So I forgot mine, but they have a QR code on them, and around the QR code is 4 dots, so a blind person could kind of know how to aim their camera to scan the QR code, and it'll scan your contact information and put it in your phone. So that's one thing that we do. But the Arts and Accessibility Initiative is Brian's the head of it, and what we really do is try to open up people's eyes, pardon the pun, to how can you make your spaces accessible for blind and visually impaired people who have money to spend as well. And once you do some of these things, word will get out in the community, and you'll see a lot more blind and visually impaired people come into your site. We have done tactile graphics for art for the Cincinnati Art Museum. We've done booklets for the Cincinnati Art Museum. We've done booklets for the Cincinnati Sign Museum, which is really an interesting place. I've never been there yet, but if you ever get a chance to go to Cincinnati, you should go there. We've done playbills, scripts for this a place in Texas called Tilt, and they have plays where the actors are multiple disabilities. So, and they have some of the actors who are blind. So we've done their scripts in Braille for them. We've done things for the Met. We've done things for the Art Museum in Philadelphia. We won awards for some of our work that we've done with different museums around Ohio. So those are the things that I'm really proud of, and I'm also proud of our Braille Challenge. There's anybody from Braille Institute here. We did our Braille Challenge. We've done it for years, 4, 5, 6 years, and I'm always happy to be a part of that. This year I was able to be a proctor in one of the rooms. Usually we graded, but it's become so big that we don't have time for everybody to sit and grade and get everything done. So we send it away to be graded, so now I was able to be a proctor, so that was fun. Got to read off a spelling list for kids and kind of got to show them what it's like to, be successful as a blind and visually impaired person. So, okay.
So I'm the initiative, I've been quiet, but the initiative I'm the most proud of is I'm the sports guy. So when I lost my sight at the age of 14, bizarre story. If you want to know that, just YouTube my name. But I was walking down the street, couldn't see nothing. Weird. So my first love is basketball. I call that my baby. So when I got diagnosed, it was the middle of a basketball season, and the doctor was like, "Hey man, I don't think you should play no more. I think this is very dangerous for you." Bozo. He was totally wrong. I kept playing all 4 years. I got the Courage Award at my high school, which 2 people ever won. It was me in 2014 and a guy in like 1950 something. I don't know. But 2 people got the Courage Award for playing basketball while being blind. It was pretty cool. And I did an interview with the news, and I told the news, I want to teach kids who are blind or visually impaired how to play sports. Never knew it had a name, never knew what it was called. I just knew I didn't want the doctor to tell nobody else what he told me. But my job ended up making a way for me, which is adaptive sports and leisure coordinator. Mm-hmm. And I truly, honestly believe you can adapt any sport. Like baseball, this is an adaptive baseball. So kids who blind or visually impaired can play baseball. If I get the pen back in, it'd be quiet. This is an adaptive tennis ball. It's an adaptive soccer ball. So I believe that you can. These just a couple I brought, but I truly believe that you can adapt any sport. And I've been talking about sheltering the whole time because I really don't like when parents shelter kids, because I feel like sports and leisure is a thing that bring the kids out their comfort zone, that allow them to make friends with other people, that allow them to just not feel so secluded. Because if you're blind or visually impaired, what are your options? You don't have a lot. So I think things like fitness and yoga and giving the kid a little more leeway on teaching them how to maybe using things such as the microwave a little earlier and not so late in life, and not just trying to say, hey, I can do this for you, or hey, do you need me to do that? Instead, teaching them how to do that, showing them how to do, just leading them instead of doing it for them. And I think sports is a great way to do that. Did you all know there's 3,000 blind and visually impaired athletes? Interesting. It's a USC football player who's visually impaired. Mm-hmm. So it's various things like that who people and kids doesn't even know exist because they don't have the access to those things. And I'm proud that Clover Nook gave me the lane and the pathway to arrowhead that and just take it full throttle, because ever since I've been in this role, it's been great. And I've discovered things I never knew or never even knew existed. I just knew I didn't want that doctor to tell anyone else what he told me.
If someone wanted to find out, more information about the Adaptive Sports and Leisure Program, where would you direct them?
Good question, Brian. You can go to clovernook.org, or you can keep up with any of our sports and leisure activities on our Facebook page, or you can just, take a business card before I leave and just email me, and I can keep you updated with anything. I can send you a direct link. But for starters, clovernook.org. Brian, you've seen some of the things we offer at Clover Nook. Did you participate in any sports and leisure activities growing up?
So as a kid, I was a basketball and a football lover. I know we in San Francisco, but I love my LA teams. Go Lakers. But with growing up in the 90s, I saw Michael Jordan do everything, and like a lot of kids that grew up in the 90s, you wanted to be like Mike. And so even though I was visually impaired, I just worked harder. I may be visually impaired, but I can shoot a basket, I can throw a football. And so those are just two of the activities that I participated in as a youth and enjoyed them. Wish I would have did more.
Did you participate in any sports and leisure activities growing up, David?
Yes, I did. When I went to the Oklahoma School for the Blind, we had track and field, powerlifting, goalball, wrestling. I was involved in all of that. You wouldn't know it now, but that was back in the 80s, But yeah, I was involved in all that. We did, when you ran if you were in like a longer distance race, you would run with a sighted person and you would tie a shoestring around your wrist and their wrist, and they would guide you. So we came up with ways. We had a 50-yard dash where it was cables. The lanes were divided by cables, and that's what you ran along. We had people who would do high jump, long jump. It was interesting. In goalball, we did goalball, and we did pretty good. We'd go in tournaments and things like that, and I've been to some of the national events for the United States Association of Blind Athletes, so that was fun.
David, could you talk about some of your experiences while being blind and visually impaired, positive and negative?
Sure. I've had a lot of positive experiences. People are generally nice and are kind, and I've gone to museums before where there has been a touch table that was completely accessible. They had this pin thing that you put on this code, this little metal strip on the items on the touch table, and it would tell you about it. And you could choose if you wanted it read for children on a children's level or adult level. So that was pretty cool to be able to go and do that. That was very positive for me, and being involved with this Arts and Accessibility Committee has really helped open up a lot of things in that regard. There have been some negatives. When I was dating my wife, we hadn't been married yet, but I was doing laundry and I had to go outside and go to a different building to do my laundry, and I got spray painted by some kids, and I was like, okay, what is that smell? I said, that smells like paint. And they're like, oh, it's not paint. So you're just smelling things. I said, well, I might be blind, but I'm not dumb. I said, I think you spray painted me, and it was red spray paint on my jeans. So, kind of upset about it. Called my girlfriend at the time. She cried. She said, that's it. We're doing your laundry at my house. We'll just bring it over. She said, you don't need that. I said, it's okay. She said, no. She said, so I called the apartment manager. She did research, found one of the boys who was involved. His mom was told. She gave me money to buy new jeans. He had to come down and apologize. To make it worse for him, they made him at a family reunion stand up in front of his whole family and tell them what he had done. So I didn't want all that to happen, but you kind of have to stand up for yourself. I've learned that. You kind of have to stand up for yourself. But most of my experiences have been okay. I've had someone try to cheat me out of money. And he said, here's your 5, and I just had this feeling. I said, can I have 5 ones for that? And he said, oh, sure. Well, the boss had watched the whole thing happen. He said, you can get your stuff and go because you're fired. Just right there, he said, how did you know? I said, I just had a feeling. He said, well, if you wouldn't have said anything, I was right there. I would have said something. I don't know why he did that with his boss standing right there. I don't know what he thought was going to happen. But so, there's been negative and positive. And you just have to keep your head up. And you just have to go on.
Brian?
So I'll talk about a negative experience and then end on a positive note. So, any negative experience I've had is, when you visit a new space and there's no large print. It's very difficult for me to interact with things when it's very difficult to see. And, you're visiting a new space and it's like, okay, how can I interact with things if, print is tiny? And so, I'm able to, be independent and do things like that, but small print is a no-go for me. But the positive experience that I would really like to talk about is, we all visit restaurants. We all go to different places and things. When you're blind and visually impaired, how do you see the menu? Do you have someone that you're going with read it to you? If you're going alone, do you Google it? Do you ask the waiter or waitress to read it to you? Well, with an accessible app that one of my friends has created, allows someone who is blind and visually impaired to be able to read the menus from almost any restaurant. There's almost about 1 million restaurants on this app. It's called Menus for All. And it gives anyone actually the opportunity to interact with it. You're able to be independent. You're able to, read that menu. And so, no longer do you have to depend on other people. And, as anyone with a disability, especially blindness or being visually impaired, we want to be independent. We want inclusion. We want to be able to do things for ourselves. So, I felt like that was a great invention. If you have an iPhone, the majority of people who are blind and visually impaired use Apple products.
Great.
You are able to go into your iOS store and be able to download your Menus for All app. And when you go visit a restaurant that is included there, you are able to be able to interact with it and order your food yourself.
David, really, really quick. We running in on time.
Right.
Name a couple terminologies. I think this is very important. Name some terminologies that people may not know you're blind, and they'll just try to say, like for instance, I mentioned earlier that how many fingers I'm holding up. Just give us a couple that you may find offensive.
Sight challenged is one. I've heard that one. Sight impaired is another. I'm fine with being called blind because I am, but I know visually impaired people wouldn't want to be called blind because they aren't. So I'm fine with totally blind. People are afraid to say the word blind. They'll be like, how long have you been, I say blind, and they go, oh, he said the word. I said, yeah, I say the word. And another thing is when people say, have you heard this movie? That sounds so weird to me. It's like, oh yeah, I've seen that movie. No, you haven't. I've seen it in my own way. I've had adults who are serious tell me that. I'm like, really? Really? I said, so, you know, say, have you seen this movie or have you watched this? It's not going to offend me. So I'm fine with that. So,
Brian?
I kind of in recent years had a different perspective about things. I used to be very offended by a lot of different things, you know, being called blind or cross-eyed or things of that sort. But, you know, kind of falling in love with myself. I don't really care what people call me. You can say anything you want. It doesn't bother me. I feel like, you know, terminologies are set to try to push a person's buttons, but if you get rid of your buttons, they have nothing to press.
Right.
So, you know,
I like that.
yeah,
Me
I don't
Remember
really.
that. Make a bumper sticker in it.
I don't really allow. I actually got that from my mom. You know, a lot of people will say, "Oh, they pressed my buttons." Well, get rid of your buttons. They have nothing to press. So I don't really allow terminologies to really offend me anymore. I actually write poetry about, you know, things that people used to say to me, and it was therapeutic for me. So I don't really have too much to say about that.
I wish I get to that point in life. One thing people say, it's only one thing. I'm pretty good. I don't care what you call me. I used to be terrible because I lost my sight so young at the age of 14. So it was kind of like a culture shift. You in the middle of becoming a teen, then so it was kind of weird. So I used to get into a lot of fights and stuff. So I'm pretty good now. But one thing I dislike when people say, boy, where your glasses at?
No.
That's I respond back. I be like, if I needed them, if I had them, don't you think I have them on? So that just be so irritating. Other than that, because I think it'll be easier if people just say, "Are you okay? Do you need help?" Instead of saying, "Boy, where your glasses at?" I would have them on if I could wear them. I would these don't work, but I would really have them on if I could. That's why I dislike when people say that. So other than that, I'm okay. Don't nobody say how many fingers are you holding up, or somebody might say, "What are you looking at?" So I appreciate you all for listening to us. I hope you all learned something. I hope you all took something well. Really appreciate it, and we really want to open the floor up if you guys got any questions, want to know anything, curious about anything, wonder what we do at Clover Nook, or got any questions for us three as a panel.
This is your time to ask anything you want.
Yes, ma'am.
So for Brian, what are the titles of your 2 books, and would you be willing to also elaborate a little bit on how your blindness has impacted your creative process?
Great question. So, my first book is called A Penny for My Thoughts. A Penny for My Thoughts. And my second book is called Vision Over Sight. Vision Over Sight is all one word. And then A Legally Blind Poet's Truth by, my pen name is B. Anderson. And so you can find those books on Amazon. I also have a few copies of my Vision Over Sight book with me. How has my blindness impacted my creativity? In a great way. Honestly, I've been asked this question many times, and I don't feel like I would truly be the creative I am or creative at all if I wasn't visually impaired. I don't, I honestly feel like that fueled me. My doctor had told me one day, hey, find an outlet, find something that helps you get through your depression, and writing was the obvious answer. So it's impacted me in a great way.
Anyone else? Yes.
So don't really have a question, but I just wanted to say I really got a lot out of this session. I really liked how Brian, your writing poetry boost your confidence, and and I just wanted to say even though I'm not famous like you, I love writing, so you and I are in the same boat with that one, and I like your accent.
Thank you. Keep writing.
Yes. I can't
Jennifer,
see.
go.
I just seen a hand.
Jennifer. Okay.
Sorry, I forgot your name. The guy
Di-
in the middle.
Des.
Des.
Yeah.
You mentioned you lost your sight when you were 14.
Yes.
How did that kind of like play out when like you mentioned you're in the middle of like becoming a teenager, you're entering high school. Like, how did your friends and family make that adjustment? Like, was it hard? Like, did they still expect you to like do sighted things, and like did it take them a while to understand? Or how was that for them and also for you?
So, great question. It was kind of weird for me. So, as a 14, let's be honest. As a 14-year-old boy, the first thing I thought about was girls. I'm like, don't nobody want no little visually impaired boy. So, totally opposite. Literally, totally opposite. So the equipment I had to use in school, everybody wanted to play with it. Like, ooh, you walking around with a TV, that's cool. Like, so then everybody was like, oh, you using them? So I use a little magnifying glass to text and use my phone. So everybody like, oh, I want to see that. That's so cool. I got a flashlight on it. So I'm like, yeah. But I went to a public high school in the middle of Cincinnati, so I was the only visually impaired person out of like all these people. So everybody think it's kind of like abnormal.
That's because I graduated a year before him.
So, but me adjusting to it was really weird because I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know if it was a cure. I got Leber's hereditary optic neuropathy. So it runs in the family, but it's like hit or miss. And I just so happened to get it. So it really was no answer for it. Didn't nobody know what was going on. I didn't know what was going on. So the first thing I thought about, like I said, was girls and playing basketball. So I was like, how am I going to be to continue to do these things? So my whole motto was make a way when there's no way. So my whole mindset is, and these two could tell you, I'm never sad, I'm never down. They probably never ever see me upset.
Nope.
Because I try to find the bright side of any situation. Literally, any situation I try to find it. So when I lost my sight, I'm like, okay, if this is gonna be me for the rest of my life, how can I make this my situation and embrace it? I want to grow where I'm planted. So this is where they planted me at. So now I'm gonna just grow here, and that's how I thought about it. Because forever, my mama was praying for my sight. I said, you praying for something I'm not praying for. Like, this is where I want to grow it. If this is how it's going to be, this is how I want to live life. Like, I accepted it. It took me a while to accept it, but once I accepted it, I think that's when I flourished.
Amen to that.
Thank you. Yes. So many hands going up. Yeah, I started. Yeah.
So earlier you were talking about accepting, being visually impaired or blind. What would you tell to somebody who's having that trouble of accepting or coming to terms with it? Who, someone that's new to losing their vision and they don't know how to deal with that stuff.
Is that question for me?
Oh yeah, I think that's pretty.
Okay. So honestly, that kind of fueled me in writing Vision Over Sight, A Legally Blind Poet's Truth. I wanted it to be geared towards people who may already be blind or visually impaired, or new people that may have trouble accepting it. And I would say I always look at life as glass half full, and so I would tell people find the best in whatever it is that you like to do. If you love basketball and you're unable to play it, become a commentator. Become the person that interviews the players coming off the court. You can always be involved in something, even if you can't do it at the highest level. Find the things that you can do and excel in it. Work harder. Like I said, I look at writing as a sport. And so, it's something that I wanted to progress in. It's something that I wanted to excel and be the best that I possibly could. So I practice harder. I work harder. And so I would always tell people, like my mom told me growing up, you can do anything you put your mind to. And so that's what I would tell anyone who is blind or visually impaired, maybe due to it, is you can do anything you put your mind to. You just may have to work harder.
There are ways to adapt games. Me and my brother got good at it. We would use tape. We would use anything we could find that can make it tactile. We would do that with games. We would adapt. You could buy regular decks of cards and braille on them. We've done that. They don't last as long, but you can also go and get plastic coated cards that are already done. That's nice. I brought some. I didn't bring them here, but I've got some in my backpack because I guess where I'm going next week, they're going to teach me how to play euchre. So I said, I guess I better bring my Braille cards then. So that's one of the plans, I think, next week is to learn how to play euchre. So
Any questions?
never played it.
Another one
No.
over on your left side.
Yes.
For the gentleman on the left side, your attitudes are so positive in terms of dealing with your visual impairment. May I ask, were you always that positive? Because I worked with a lot of students where they're at the place where telling them that you can do it, I believe in you, isn't what they're so far away from the acceptance place, and so were you guys always, was it you just kind of born with that positive attitude, sunny disposition?
That's a great question. Definitely not always there. I started working at Clover Nook when I was about 21, and it took me probably until I was about 30 to finally accept it, and I'm 32 now. So it's really been in the last couple of years since I really began to live in my truth and my purpose. But for the majority of my life, I walked around with my head down. I wore sunglasses all the time. If anyone goes through my Facebook pictures, literally for about 10 years, I wore nothing but sunglasses. I just wanted to hide what everybody could already see. And I just realized I don't want to be 50 and 60 years old just starting to live in my truth. It's like, why not now? I mean, what am I really hiding from? I should be thankful of the fact that I actually have sight. And so, but it did take me a long time. So when I see people who aren't at that level, I try to, really try to understand where they're coming from. And, I tell my story, because when you're vulnerable with people who aren't there yet, it gives them a whole different perspective. Mm-hmm. And so, but if you kind of talk like you're bigger than them and you're above them, all you're doing is pushing them down further. And it's not really elevating you at all. I mean, it just kind of makes you look like a clown, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. But, it's just all about helping others get to your level or exceed your level.
Something that helped me is him. I never met no one that was visually impaired until I met, no one, I'm surprised he hasn't said this yet, actually. I never met no one that was visually impaired. I don't want to say hip, but they still wore Yeezys and Jordan and Pope until I met him. So I used to think all the visually impaired people was kind of older, or you were just out of touch. So he kind of helped that. That was 10 years ago, and
so that makes me the out of touch person. I don't have on Yeezys, whatever you call them. I don't wear
It's just killing the stereotype.
Yeah. That's good. So killing the stereotype, because somebody might see us and be like, "Yeah, I don't look blind." Like, well, what do a blind person look like? Then earlier in the years, I was terrible. I got into when I first lost my sight, I got into 3 fights. I would just, every time somebody say, "Can you see?" I want to fight. Literally. But I had to accept, that's why I say I had to grow where I was planted. I had to accept, okay, this is my life. Now what you gonna do? You can't keep fighting people. I really had, and that was at the early stages. You just can't keep fighting people. I had my last fight, my freshman year of high school. I got suspended, missed the basketball game. I ain't never fight nobody since. I said, if you gonna make me miss basketball, I don't want to fight no more. So, but we can do one more question. Yes.
Me?
Yes.
Okay. So I love playing basketball too, and I'm also visually impaired. So I was just wondering, how did you adapt to playing basketball? I mean, for example, when I play basketball, I use echolocation. So what did you do?
I don't know what
you
that
had
is, but
lost your
we need to talk about that. So shout out to my coach Brian Wyan. I forever give him praise. He will forever be my guy, because I think if I would have went to any other high school, I wouldn't have played basketball. But he adapted the game for me. So I can see, but it's just blurry. So when I was on the court, I was really, really good before I lost my sight. I didn't tell you about it. All right, we gotta go. But I was really, really good before I lost my sight. I got invited to play for the USA 14U team. I was invited to travel all over the world to get trained by Jason Kidd, Chris Paul, Jason Williams, everybody. So but I lost my sight. So he adapted the game for me. So every time I had to catch the ball, he'd make someone call my name like Dez, and I'd be listening for the bounce pass. Mm-hmm. Or if he was to catch, or if I was to get the ball, it'd be a dribble handoff. Or it'd be like, okay, we're gonna do an ISO. So it was ways he adapted it for me that made it easier so I could play. And he leaned into my strengths. So he wasn't about to, though I was a guard, he wasn't gonna have me on the perimeter trying to pass it to somebody. He was going, hey man, go try to post up and catch the ball in the post. So it was ways that I play, bless you. It was ways that I played and that I was successful, and he adapted the game to me. Because I was our team best defender. Mention that anyway.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
But thank you all again. Thank you all again.